Film Dive Podcast.
And it was just sequel after sequel after sequel.
There was no character development at all.
Just that on pure technical levels.
There are filmmakers that don't want it just to be an entertainment experience.
Hello and welcome to Media Academy Online, Film Dive Podcast. Today I'm going to be talking about War of the Worlds.
War of the Worlds.
Yeah.
It's actually one of those, it's a huge franchise that not a lot of people actually follow or understand. It's not really something that's become
Mainstream?
mainstream.
It's mainstream, like it's known, but it's kind of not.
Yeah, I remember when I talk about it, sometimes it might come in conversation. It's funny because people would be like, what is it? It's like, oh, some people know about the new film that came out that didn't really do very well, which we'll talk about.
Yeah.
But the origins of it, it was a book in the 1800s, a long time ago.
1898.
1898.
H.G. Wells.
And so when people think, oh, it's a period film, well, actually, it wasn't.
Yeah.
When it was written, it was written when it was based.
It's that kind of, it's a story that has history. It's a franchise that has history, I should say.
It's one of those ones that it doesn't really date. There's a lot of films these days that are based in modern times or whatever that date very quickly.
Yeah, this is kind of one that gets rejuvenated quite a lot. Well, it has been
quite a lot. And
for many generations. And all of a sudden we've had an influx of more War of the World stuff.
Yeah,
in the last year or so.
This is really like the OG sci-fi. Really,
it is. Yeah.
And he wrote heaps of
Time Machine.
Like that. Yeah, that was his thing. Where he wrote so many different stories all around the sci-fi thing before it was even a thing. This is all novels.
The Invisible Man, The Island of Dr. Moreau. Just to name a couple, and they've all had
reinterpretations.
Really. Yeah. So they've. He's one of the grandfathers of sci-fi, if not one of the OGs. So it's great to dip into War of the Worlds and look into this one again because it's one of those films or one of those franchises, I should say, or stories that is always relevant in ways.
And the first sort of reinterpretations of his work was a radio play, which is really interesting. Which it's the story goes that they played it, and it was a radio play that was meant to seem like a
dramatization over the radio,
like it was a news broadcast.
Yeah. And which I've heard.
Yeah, which people would listen to and would freak the fuck out, thinking that this was real.
Yeah, people. Yeah, it was said that people actually were calling in, or I don't know if they were calling in, but everyone was kind of like all of a sudden thinking this was happening. Yeah, and that was done by Orson Welles. He narrated it, or he was the voice.
And it was really the cool thing is that we still got that original broadcast. I went and listened to it a few months ago, just out of curiosity. It was on you can just Google it, just go onto YouTube. Yeah. And the whole original broadcast is there. So like at the beginning they sort of have a thing saying that it's a radio play.
But if you cut into it after that.
Yeah, that's right. And this is broadcast live. So trying to get it in the very beginning
it's crazy because like I remember my father or my parents had that on tape. So I used to play it on the tape in the car and stuff, and the sounds and all that kind of stuff that they'd have on that, was always got your mind working. I could just imagine at that time period when they did that how effective that would have been, and how people just would have been like they wouldn't have known how to take it basically.
Well, it's really so different, the kind of subject matter. It's like now we're awash with technology and we kind of understand things and we understand fantasy as a storytelling mechanism and all that stuff now, and it's just a different time, really.
Yeah, and like things coming from space or in the ground, you know what I mean? Like all that kind of stuff is.
And this was like wartime as well, so that would have
a lot of fear going around, and so.
And then the next interpretation after that would have been the movie
1953.
1953,
right.
And this was the period where we started to see sci-fi become a huge
50s.
thing.
Yeah,
the 50s was. It was all about when they started playing around with different like visual effects, which was like the saucer on a pole, you know, or,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah.
all of the real old school practical effects.
Well, I remember 1954. There was a film called Them about giant ants.
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know.
yeah.
So they were doing a lot of that kind of stuff as well. Giant animals, or you know,
Mhm.
they had tarantula and you
Yeah.
know, the Incredible Shrinking Man. I think it was, or all that kind of stuff. It was very pulpy, very
Yeah.
cool for its time. I mean,
And
yeah.
even going back and looking at some of the effects, like how they had to do some of these effects. There was one shot I remember where you had a guy grow.
Yep.
And so you'd build like a miniature version of all the mountains and everything.
Yeah.
And that would be attached to the camera itself.
Yeah.
And you'd move the camera and the person would get bigger in the frame. But all the mountains was attached to the camera, so they didn't grow.
Yeah.
Just the
Wow.
person. It looked like the person was growing. Little clever effects like that.
I love that. The stuff that they used to rig up.
Yeah.
And all very physical, just very simple kind of things when you think about
Yeah,
it.
and it's stuff that really it only got perfected. It sort of got more polished as the years went on, and it really was the only way of doing these kinds of effects until the 90s, really, before we had... This is how we did Star Wars. This is how we did all of them. It was just lots of matte paintings and...
Cameras mounted on things for movement and then models, you know?
Yeah.
And you move the camera, you don't move the models. So it's just using cameras for the movement. So it's great. I love it. I mean, science fiction, like in general, is always good for the imagination. And this film is really good at kind of following through with that.
Yeah.
And exploring, you know, the wonderful creativity that you have to use to portray science fiction in an interesting and unique way.
Yeah, because the thing is, the difference between fantasy and sci-fi is that sci-fi has to be grounded in reality, and fantasy can be whatever. And the trick is to try and make it feel grounded.
Yeah.
Because it's so easy to go into that fantasy.
Well, it just
area.
goes way too crazy.
And so it's cool to sort of see how people do attack this sci-fi, especially back in the 50s and time where now we've learnt a lot in technology and we've kind of got an understanding what technology is. But back then we didn't even have computers. We didn't have a lot of these things. It was all real mechanical things that we had. So it's sort of interesting to try and think, and even back then when people think about what the world would have looked like in year 2000, some of it was really sci-fi and didn't come true, but some of the things did come true. Very, very small things. Yeah, we actually did. Things like being able to talk to someone, see someone from the other side of the planet on a little device.
Yeah.
Something we can all do now.
Yeah,
small things like that.
It was very Star Trek-y at one point, I suppose. You know, that kind of tech where it's like, oh, you talk to someone on a screen monitor, and it's
one of the early ones was doors automatically opening.
Yeah. Like that was huge.
Yeah,
all the sci-fi.
And that's something that we got. We got pretty soon on quick. Quick.
Yeah, we caught up pretty quick
with that.
Yeah.
Now we expect all the doors to open for us almost.
I love seeing like all the way they used to sort of predict how TVs were going to look in the future.
Yeah.
that was always good. It could be like a wall of small TVs making up a big TV. It could, there's still the tube style TVs.
Yeah, that's right.
Or things like that. And yeah, I mean, yeah, it's just funny when you look back. It's great. It's good. Love that. Love seeing the development of technology.
Yeah. Because that's the thing, right? When you're making these films, you want to do all these effects, but you still have to be able to do that effect practically in real life.
Yes.
So they have to use their current technology
to
try and make it seem futuristic. That's why we always saw these big giant the tube TVs,
tube TVs, yeah. And the phones as well. I mean, they'd always have these massive phones or radios or something like that, and it always looked clunky or using typewriters.
Even if you think about something like Doctor Who started early on, and that was started off as all the typical like buttons and things that you would have seen back then.
Yes.
Now you look at the current Doctor Who's, it's just like crazy.
Yeah, it's like bloody light show.
Yeah.
But back in the day, this is the thing I think that like made things like Blade Runner and just quickly Star Wars, the original. It's that lived in, dirty, analog technology in the first Alien as well.
Yeah.
And it's all that they're utilizing all the old buttons and stuff like that, and all that technology from the time, but it kind of creates another kind of feel,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of
It creates a charm, I think. That's
It
why you
does.
look back at those films, and they've got a nice charm to them.
yeah, they do, yeah. Rather than say the films that had the stark white spaceships, and you know, the real cheesy outfits, and
yeah,
you know, Star Trek kind of falls into that category, especially the first film, but in
Yeah.
the series. But yeah, anyway,
Really, this is a story that's been redone, I think, so many times. But
Yeah,
moving on to
Invasion.
really, I think the next one there was a huge stage show
Yeah.
performance, which
Yeah.
was really clever. That came in the 90s, and it's
Mm.
sort of keeps getting re-updated, which is it's really cool because they're mixing like the live show kind of
Yeah.
performances. So it's not really necessarily like a theatre performance. It's more like you got like live band. It's almost like a live band performance
Yeah, okay.
mixed with a story getting told through these people. The
Very-
music was very sort of got a very 80s feel to it, which was
Yep.
when it sort of came out, which is
makes sense.
makes sense. And but the thing that was really cool is that they'd have a big giant screen above them, and the story would get shown through graphics
Yeah.
on that screen. So, and they had this big giant, tripod, which
Of
is their creature. You know, that it's a real life practical thing that would sort of reach out over the stage.
Yeah, cool.
So that's probably the next time it really got used was
Yep.
in the 90s, which was done in different kind of ways, stage performance, again following that same story. And then we had the Spielberg one, which was 2005.
And I was so like kind of, I was kind of not shocked. I was kind of just like, what? Steven Spielberg's done More of the Worlds when I saw it
Yeah.
coming out. And I was like, Tom Cruise. I was like, oh, okay. Because Minority Report had come out, and that was them two teaming up, and this was their second film together. And I was just like, oh, just kind of seemed like that was a bit quick. I don't know. It just seemed like they were onto something and they were just
Yeah.
rolling with it. And yeah, I mean, it's I love parts of the film,
Mm-hmm.
but there's also parts that I just sort of go hand over my
Yeah.
face like this, face palm, and just go, oh, why'd you do
The
that?
thing is, I want to love it
yeah.
because I love the story. I love War of the Worlds as a timeless story that can
Yeah.
be retold.
Mm.
And that's so I went in, even after watching it the first time, I was like, yeah, that's really cool.
Mm.
But then I think about it, and I think maybe it's just like
yeah.
love the legacy. I don't,
yeah.
not really the story,
Particularly
the
love
film.
the Spielberg
Because when you
version.
sort of break it down, it's really, there's a lot that is different to the original story.
Yeah,
So it's
massively.
modern day,
yeah.
so that's different.
Mm.
Completely different characters.
Yeah,
None of the characters
set
are
up
new.
of the families and stuff.
The,
yeah.
the beats are all different, so the story's very different.
Mm.
And the end is probably the only other similar
Sort
element of it.
part, yeah.
It's really, we're only taking the concept of that there
Invasion.
were these invasions, and that they built these big giant tripods and they were underground, and then they came
and they were like beamed from space into the tripods.
into the
and then-
tripods. And that's really the only thing that stayed the same, and how they die
yeah.
has stayed the same. The rest of it was different. The beginning, they used a little bit of the original dialogue from the novel
Yep.
at the very beginning of
Is
it.
that Morgan Freeman narrating that, I think?
Yeah.
Yeah, he is, yep.
No one would have believed.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Which is really
I'm
cool.
Morgan Freeman, marching with penguins, now I'm War of the Worlds.
There you go.
Yeah.
So there's things that are the same, but I think when I look back at it, think back at it, there's a lot of things that were different,
Mm.
and I think that would have been a better film if they just kept it as it was, as it is.
I'd love to see a Spielberg version that is actually set in the 50s.
Yeah,
That would have been interesting, you know, like, because he, you know, Close Encounters, E.T.
well, that was his thing, and that's if someone had pitched it to me before seeing the film, War of the Worlds, Spielberg, I would've-
Mm.
amazing,
Perfect.
done.
Yeah. That's what really shocked me about it, because it just felt like it was a bit half-hearted done. You
Yeah.
know, like Spielberg, I don't know. I just feel like it was like they were excited. Tom Cruise wanted to do it. Spielberg kind of wanted to do it because he probably felt like he was obligated.
Yeah.
Because, you know, he was like, well, the words, I
Yeah.
love this
Well,
thing.
yeah, he probably wanted to have his name
I want
on
to do
that.
a fresh spin on that
Yeah.
and have, you know, be associated with that legacy.
Yeah.
But I feel like there was just something lacking in it, you know, big time, you know.
Yeah.
I don't know what that is right now, but we'll get to that, I think, as we talk
Yeah,
through
well,
it a bit more.
if I sort of break it down, okay, so the visuals are great. I had no issues with the visuals.
Visually, it's fine.
It looks great.
Sound?
There was sound.
I think the sound is, if not the best thing in it.
Yeah, it sounds great.
Yeah.
I
Music's
liked
great.
the scene. I really liked one of the scenes because there's a lot of technical elements to it, which was the scene where he's driving in the car, and they're racing and trying to
The bridge behind him.
and
Yeah.
an explosion, all that stuff, and there's a lot of technical stuff they had to do with that, and none of that was practical. They were just in a car with green screen around them. They had to, so everything you see was an addition. The only thing that was real was them in the car.
Yeah.
And when you look at the car, like when you look at it now and you see the car, it zooms out of the car, and the car feels like, it looks, if I saw that, I would have thought it was practical. That's how well done it was done.
Yeah.
And so that was cool, and I was, at that stage, you know, you're feeling the impact of it all, and it's all sort of really happening. But
I think that's when the movie is actually at its best, because it's all still mysterious. The aliens haven't, you know, arrived completely yet. You know, you got that storm that's coming through. You're just sort of establishing the family.
Yeah, that's
Tom
right.
Cruise, and I really like his kind of dad character in this, because he's such an assholey kind of character, and it just kind of throws you off a bit. You got Dakota Fanning playing the daughter.
This was her
who's
early
just,
days too,
and she's just nailing every role she does.
Yeah.
Apart from a lot of screaming, which kind of grates on me. The screaming in this film,
Yeah.
but it's, you know,
If they redid this film, I would have liked to spend a little bit more time on their relationship a bit. There was a little bit of it, but it was pretty much like,
it was very
hi,
quick.
I'm the daughter, or I'm the dad,
Yeah.
and they're straight in.
Yeah.
I think they probably, another 15 minutes just really understanding
half
that
an
would've-
hour. You know, a bit of a slow burn there, and a bit more. Oh, this is happening, but
and
you're
it
not
means
saying
you
it.
can build that tension up more, because you can have little bits, little elements, you know.
Yeah, I think that's the main thing with the film. Like, it has great ideas in it, but then but they're kind of wasted here and there, and then they kind of spend time in parts that kind of don't really need to be there, especially after the halfway mark.
So all the parts seem to work. You're right. Like if I sort of think about it, you know, the acting is fine. The visuals, they're fine. Break it down into the parts. The story, I'm not so sold on now. I think back at it, and that might be the missing piece.
The main piece that kind
which is really, like, I think rewriting the story, if it had to be in modern day, fine, but you need to spend a bit more time. You need to do what I call the Titanic effect, which is Titanic is half of that film is all character driven. And that's why we felt the impact so strong, and that's why the film became, you know, the highest grossing film of all time at that stage, is that they spent time on those characters. So that we had to feel this connection between the daughter and the dad.
And the son.
That's what we really needed, to feel the tension between those characters. And that takes time, and that I think they should have spent.
It felt a bit like rushed. So you were kind of like forced to feel these ways about them.
Yeah.
And like the Tom Cruise character is pretty unlikable, the way he's acting towards his kids.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a bit,
he's
struggling with that a bit.
We needed a reason to want to follow him. We needed more of a reason, just to, we need to empathize with him.
Yeah. And we're not given much.
Yeah. We need, okay, maybe he's given it a go, he's trying, but we needed to understand his point of view a bit more.
Yeah.
Rather than just being a hopeless father.
Yeah.
Because it's not enough, you know?
No, it wasn't. And, you know, Tom Cruise, you know, he usually doesn't play massively unlikable father kind of characters, so you're kind of struggling with that. And then, but the movie's already kind of jumped off by the time you're even getting used to that. And I just feel like where they go, like just the kind of the flow of the film's a bit choppy here and there as well.
Yeah, it is. I think it's trying to steal bits from the original content. So we had that whole when they're in the basement and the things creeping around. That's kind of in the original story. But
I don't mind that part, but it's kind of it's in a weird place.
yeah, and that's I think that's what it is. It's them trying to connect the dots and finding reasons to get to those iconic moments.
Yeah,
rather than making it feel a bit more
organic.
It's all just very, all right, we have to get to this scenes. How are we going to get there?
Yeah. I think it was just. I don't think they spent enough time in pre-production on it or something. Like, they didn't quite flesh out exactly what they wanted to do.
It would have been I think probably might have just been a case of the studio saying it's a sure thing, you know, it's Spielberg, it's action,
it's Cruise,
it's War of the Worlds, it's Cruise, it's all of them. We're ticking the boxes.
Everything's ticked,
and that's all they're looking at. They're not looking at the whole thing. They're just looking at all the parts.
And it probably was just overconfidence too, and maybe a bit of that too. Maybe they just all thought like, oh, you know, we can just wing it. Yeah. And then this is the period where Spielberg, I find like a lot of his films, especially after Catch Me If You Can and Minority Report, and then there's Munich, you know, they're pretty good films, but ones like this where they kind of feel a bit half-baked, like he's kind of half there and half not. I don't know if it's him just kind of on reserve, you know, a bit, and he's kind of just winging it a bit.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he's
going
kind
through
of
the motions.
To me, I find him a bit of hit or miss.
Yeah.
Where some of these big giant actors, they're very surface.
Yeah.
And it's a bit of a shame, and I think that maybe that this film in particular is kind of one of those where it's
would have been better if this film had like a Michael Shannon or like a, not Jeremy Renner, but someone that wasn't like a hot, you know, at that time, that wasn't an A-list actor, someone that wasn't so big, you know, more of an everyman. If you're following more of an everyman like Paul Giamatti or someone like that, that's like schlubby and, you know, you know, Philip Seymour Hoffman, I don't know. Anyone that's not like the god actor, that's like Mr. Perfect, it would have been it would have been really interesting, you know.
Those kind of characters that are sort of lovable but are given it a crack are the ones you kind of need, and especially for this role, which they're trying to go for that dad who's really given it a go,
and an everyman almost as well.
Yeah, but it's just like
it's hard to believe that when it's Tom Cruise. I mean, I love Tom Cruise for who he is, but he's only good at kind of playing the cruisy roles, but this one,
the perfect man.
I don't think that puzzle quite fits here.
Yeah. Which I guess sort of fast forward to the end of the film, it kind of works, but I think it kind of was over. And again, I would have spent a little bit more time on the ending, on rebuilding civilization.
Yeah, it's a very quick
kind of. So it's kind of just like, all right, they're dead. All right, let's get back to real life. And now I'm a good dad.
And by the way, it was the common cold that killed them.
Yeah,
and it's just like, what? Hang on.
Which I think they needed to spend a bit more time on building that idea,
the impact,
and how that changes society, and how that will affect society.
Maybe that could have been the angle they were going for with this
which I'll briefly talk about at the end. Now there's a TV show that's a bit more in depth about that. In a perfect world, if they remade this film, we need a film that has characters that we can follow. Like the original story had those strong characters that we believed, and the reason why it worked so well in the original narrative is because it was the whole story was told from one guy's point of view. Yeah, and he's following his love of his life, and we understand his thoughts because he's telling us his thoughts. Yeah, and so if this film was going to get remade, it'll have to be made from a similar point of view where we're understanding 100% what they're doing and what they're going for and what they want to achieve, rather than just escaping the scary stuff. Yeah, yeah. We need to see them. They need to go somewhere for some reason. Yeah, and then we also need to feel the lasting impact that this would have on our life. Yeah, like think about coronavirus. Like that's fucked up society in different ways.
It's had a massive impact across society.
And that's such a little thing. Imagine if we had giant robots come from the sky. Yeah. You know, giant aliens.
Things would be, severely changed. You know, like there'd be massive.
And I'm waiting for the film that really explores that. Yeah. Really explores the upheaval and what happens when society goes to
and I think that would have been a better angle for them to go with this. But it seemed like they just went for the safe bets all around. Yeah. But I mean, it is what it is. Spielberg made $600 million. at that time.
Did okay, I suppose, financially.
Yeah, no, it did great. And
So-
it could have done better, but I think this is the time period Cruise jumped on.
Yeah, well, I
Oprah's
mean, this
couch.
around this time, that's the kind of what you're getting for these films.
Yeah,
It
but I
was
think,
these you'd rarely get those $1 billion films.
yeah, you
but
wouldn't.
now
Yeah.
you get them almost every second film.
Mm.
You're getting those $1 billion plus.
All coming from the one place.
Yeah.
practically. But
Um,
thou shall not be named.
Yeah, but finishing off this, this topic, as I briefly mentioned before, there is now a TV series.
Yeah, it's a UK one, right?
Mm.
Yeah.
And
I've
I've
gotta check that
watched the first 2 episodes of it, and then I stopped watching it. But I was actually really getting into it.
out. Okay, I wanted to check it out because I like the actor they put in it.
Yeah, so they built up the story well. They built up these characters well. We had a reason. They it might have been a bit contrived, the reason, the way they got split up. But we had this couple, which was going back to the original narrative about this couple that got split up, and trying to find each other again. So that story's there from what I can see. We spent time on the characters, and again, I watched the first 2 episodes. And it's only now just starting to get to shit. So we spent time again on building up those characters,
Right.
which I think is important. Spending time on building up that narrative. This is more based on the original. This effectively is the interpretation of the original story. So it's based at the time of the original story. So 1898.
Yeah.
And it's got all those pieces. So I'd really like to finish it, because it was going somewhere well. At this stage, I had spent time on building up these political characters and all these building blocks of the upheaval that this creates in society were all there. So I want to see where they go from here.
There's only 3 episodes.
Is there?
Yeah.
Well, then it's not going anywhere.
Well, so we're going to be doing science fiction stuff.
Yeah.
For the next few weeks and see how we go with it. There's plenty to delve into.
Yeah, this is really the last genre left for us to really smack into. Well, we've already done everyone else. We've done animation. We've done all of them.
Yeah, we've done a lot. So this would be good to really get into my favourite genre of film, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot to talk about. We have spoken about some sci-fi films here and there.
Have Ex Machina and Blade Runner.
But it'd be good to have a little run. So throwing it out there, anyone watching, if you've got any ideas, any favourite sci-fis that you want to suggest to us.
If I haven't already seen it, I'd be surprised.
Yeah,
but
give a suggestion and we'll talk
Challenge
about
us.
it. Yeah,
that'd be
throw
good.
us. If you want to hear our thoughts on any film that you love, let us know. Any sci-fi film, let us know.
Yeah, we're really interested to hear anything you guys have to say.
And if you've reached this far, actually let us know that you've reached this far, so we're not just talking to ourselves.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Anyway, we'll leave it there.
We'll wrap it up and
Like, subscribe, ring that bell.
and all that goodies, and we'll see you next time.
See you later.
Adios.